Hey guys, welcome back to Algos Made Simple. Got a pretty easy one today, a little tricky, but once we go over it and do it as simple as possible, I think it's definitely one that you'll be able to retain and be pretty confident that if you get a problem like this, you'll be ready to attack it and knock it out. So with that being said, let's dive right in here to it. This is Leetcode 20 valid parentheses. It states, given a string S containing just the characters, and it's got the following characters in open parentheses, a closed parentheses, open curly bracket, open bracket, and close bracket, determine if the input string is valid. An input string is valid if open brackets must be closed by the same type of brackets, open brackets must be closed in the correct order. So I'd let the interviewer know, okay, I understand I'm getting a string, and it's going to have the above different various types of parentheses is what it's going to be based off, and it just needs to make sense. You know, it's going to be closed off with the right corresponding parentheses type. So I understand what I'm looking for, I understand what I'm trying to do. Let's go through the examples and see if something kind of comes to mind about how we should code this up and what we should be looking for. So example one, about as basic as it gets, you've got S equals parentheses here. So there's an open one and a closed one, and that's obviously true. The next example they show you, it's just the various types all closed off. That's true. Then it's got an example down here where it's closed off by the wrong type of bracket. That's false. But an additional example I wish they had that you need to think of here, and obviously we know something like this is valid, but it kind of changes the problem a little bit, because if you were just thinking about it just with these examples and just basing your code off of that, you might think you could just go through and kind of say, hey, if this is the character right here, if this character is the open parentheses, or if the current character, you could have a current character variable or a previous character variable. If previous character was this, then this next character needs to be this, and so on and so forth. And if you don't get the corresponding character, then you could return false. But that's not the case, because you could have brackets closed inside, or parentheses closed inside of parentheses kind of thing. And that will change the problem there. So with that change of the problem, that should get you thinking, okay, we've got to do something where we're looking up the corresponding value, because we can't just assume that the previous character and the next character are going to be the match we're looking for. So we're going to have something to keep those previous characters or to reference. We need something like a hash map. So when you encounter something like this, where you're going to be doing lookups to corresponding values, so key value pairs, always good to think of hash map, dictionary, hash table, etc., whatever you want to call it. So we know we're going to need a hash map. All right, we know that if we were going through this example right here, and I'm getting this character right here, this ending closing bracket right here, if I can highlight it, this closing bracket right here, when I'm looking it up, I don't want to look it up to this parentheses right here. I want to look it up to this bracket. So I need something, some type of list, some type of I don't know, some type of stack or queue that I can look at, that I can pull the most recent thing off of. So not the very first thing that's sitting there, so you don't want to do a queue, but the most recent, so I want to utilize a stack. Because again, I'm going to be adding stuff to a list that's come through on this string, so I'm going to be adding these outer ones to the string, or to the list, and then I want to be able to see if what I'm getting when I get a closing bracket or closing parentheses, if it corresponds to that. So a stack is what we're going to utilize here. The other thing I know I'm going to utilize is, of course, a for loop is going to happen, and a for loop is going to be based off of the length of S or what's in S. That's something we know for sure. And we know that we're going to be adding stuff to this stack, and at the end, and we're probably going to append stuff to the stack and also pop stuff from the stack, so append pop. And what we know is if we're finding all those corresponding ones and we're popping it off as we find it, then we want, for this to be true, the stack to be empty at the end for true. And if it's not, then it obviously be false. If we find a closing parentheses type, and it doesn't correspond with what we have on the stack already, so a mismatch, that's going to yield false. And I think that's all we need in our game plan. So with that being said, let's get right into the code here and see what we can do. So we got a function, and it is valid, and we're going to string pass to it. So again, we said that we need a hash map. So our hash map will be made up of the closed parentheses with their corresponding open parentheses. So we can call that, we just call it parenthesis types or something like that. Let's just call it pair types just to make it easy. And what we'll do is, and don't get confused by the fact that you have curly brackets here, because you're going to be putting curly brackets inside of here as well. So we'll do a closed parentheses, and that'll correspond to its open parentheses. And then we'll do a closed bracket, and that'll correspond to an open bracket. And then we will finally do a closed curly bracket, and that will correspond to an opening curly bracket. So that's what we got right there. Let's see if I can make this a little clearer. Let's just to make that a little easier to know what we're looking at. And I'll put that bracket down here. Keep that bracket up there. So of course that's what we're looking for, the corresponding types. A closed parenthesis is going to correspond to an open parenthesis. A closed bracket correspond to open bracket. Closed curly bracket correspond to an open curly bracket. And theoretically, I guess you could do these either way. You could have your closed ones here, open ones here, just as long as you write the code the right way. But going through that, we also said we needed a stack. And a stack we can just set up just to make it easy as possible. Just set it up as an empty list. And we know that we're going to be taking from the -1 position, because we want the last thing. We want the most recent thing that has been added to that stack. So not what's been waiting in a queue. Alright, so then we're past that. We know the next thing we need, because we're stuck here. There's nothing else we can really do. We got just the string coming in. We can't really dissect it or anything we want to with it right now at this point. So what we'll do is, this is where the for loop comes. We'll say for C in S, and then we'll just do, and let me get all this on one page here. Alright, we'll say for C in S, and that S is supposed to be lowercase, but for C in S, if this C is in, let me get the rest of our code here, hold on. Oh, that's everything, so I got that there. For C in pair types, what we want to do is, if that stack at -1 is equal to the pair types, so at C, so what we return, the value, not the key, but the value that corresponds with the key, if that equals what we have on the stack, then you know, okay, I can pop that off the stack, I found the match, it's done. You found the match right here. So you just do stack.pop, which removes from the end of the stack. Boom, easy enough. One thing we have to keep in mind right here, though, is if we come down here, say it's our very, very first letter happens to be a closing parenthesis, our first character happens to be a closing parenthesis or closing bracket, whatever. There's not going to be anything on this stack, so what will happen is we'll get a key error here. So what we need to do is if stack, so if there's something on stack, and stack -1, because this will end out right here if there's nothing on the stack, if the stack is empty. If it just, kind of basically doesn't even exist or not being utilized. So with that being said, if this comes through and the most recent thing on the stack is not the corresponding type of parentheses, then we know at that point that we can go ahead and return false, because we've got a mismatch here. That means going up here, if we have that -1, so looking at this example right here, if I run into this one right here and the -1, say these things were switched, do bracket and then parentheses. So if I get this closing one right here and I look at my -1 on the stack of these parentheses, they don't match. This is not going to be valid right here. This is going to be false. Okay, so going past that, the other thing it could be if it's not so it's not in pair type, so it's not a key in pair types. So it won't search the values, it just searches the keys. So if it's not a closing parentheses, then all we're going to do is come here and add it to our stack to be able to look through. So stack.append, and you just append C. And so after all that, if we get through this for loop, and we haven't gotten stopped here at this return false point at any point, then if this stack has been emptied, if there's nothing left in it, so if not stack, you're going to return true. Else, if there's still an opening bracket or parentheses that just never had its corresponding closing one, so it's never been popped off, then you're returning false. That's all there is to this problem, guys. So the main thing to remember on this one is just that you're going to utilize a hash map and start pulling the values and looking at them through there. And then, of course, you want to utilize a stack because you want to look through it. So if you go through the examples on this one and really go through every different type of example, that's where you'll discover something like this. And this will let you know that, hey, I want to pull the last thing off. So it's going to be a stack, and it needs to correspond with it. So that the examples will kind of spell out the solution to you on this one. But again, here's our solution. This runs in O of n time, and we're looking at, if we wanted to test it out, of course, we can run this through and see that you got a bracket. So we go down here, bracket is not, the open bracket is not going to be in par types, so it's just going to get appended to our stack. Okay, then we've got an open parentheses. An open parentheses is not going to be in par type, so it gets appended to our stack. So we got an open bracket, open parentheses on our stack. We go here, get our closed bracket. Our closed bracket is in par types, so it's going to say if stack -1, which is our open parentheses, equals the value at the key closed bracket, which is an open bracket, then we're going to pop it. It doesn't, so we're going to return false. We're done right there. So it works for that. You could test out some more solutions, but this, or some more examples, but this works. It's O of n. A simpler problem, guys, and one that I hear gets asked in a lot of interviews and a lot of just online assessments and phone interviews. So be ready for this. But again, not too difficult. If you get stuck, just remember to go through the examples and really think about what kind of tools you need to utilize here, because the examples literally spell this one out of what you have to do and what you're trying to do. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back with another one soon, and keep grinding out there. Thanks.